Right. So, every time we come together like this, I'm just watching and I see your heart for God. I mean, you wouldn't be spending your Saturday here if you didn't want more of God. You wouldn't be spending it here. You have people from, different places, different backgrounds, and I know you want God in your life, but I also believe that there's a whole lot more that you want. I believe you want God for your communities. I believe you want to see God do things in your neighborhoods. I believe you want to see things happen in your families. I believe you want more than just a personal experience with the presence of God. And so I tend to be, I've been on a big picture thing lately. I think that all this, times I've spoken, I've had ridiculous amounts of scripture. This time it's a bit more contained, but still sweeping pictures of what's happening in a larger context, because we tend to get in a very small, focused context for our lives, and we look at what's happening with us, and it's all about what's happening with us, so we can meet people around us. And so I was looking, and I'm going to be reading out the book of Nehemiah, because we're talking about the presence of God, and we say that one is presence. He wants not just individuals to fill, he wants a people to fill. And if we want him to come in a measure of power in our communities, then there needs to be a place for him to come to. Not a physical place, but a place that is built for him and established for him. And so the time here that I'm looking at, I'm starting in Nehemiah chapter 4. I'm just going to kind of fill you in a little bit. The children of Israel have been exiled. They've been living, being carried away to Babylon. And they finally had the opportunity with King Cyrus, I believe, was the first one, who gave them the opportunity to go back to their land. And he said, any of you who want to go back, and it was mainly the Levites and the priests and the leaders who said, we want to go back. We want to return to the promise that God had given to us. We want to return to the place that he had promised us, the land he had given us, that we lived for so long. We want to go back there. We want to see the presence of God established in the place that he said that he would come and he would go to speak with them. And they got together, they got some other people who wanted to go back with them. And they headed back, and they went back to Jerusalem. And they had their priorities right. The very first thing that they did, once they got some sort of roof and shelter over their head, was they established and rebuilt the altar of God. They rebuilt a place of sacrifice. They rebuilt a place of worship, because everything had to start with that place. And I believe all of us in this room, we got that. We love worship. We love to give to God. We love to honor him. We love to praise him. We love to pour out our hearts to him. We love to put that worship out there to him. And I believe we've got that. And the next thing that they did is they started working on building up the temple. They wanted to rebuild the temple, because that's where God said, my presence will dwell, right? And he said, I will dwell in this, leave his house. My presence will be there. I'll dwell there. His presence had come when Solomon's temple was built, and he'd come and he'd fall in the middle, and his presence rested there. And it was so powerful that ministry couldn't go on as normal, even in the temple. And they wanted to see this again. So they said, we need to build a place. We need to build a place for God to work. So they came back and started working on the temple first. And clearly, after that, this whole process was not easy. If you think, oh great, God led us back to the land and this is going to be a breeze, it's not the way it worked for them. And I think a lot of times we think that clearly it was God leading, because king of a Persian empire doesn't typically say, hey, why don't you guys just go reestablish your own city after you've taken and conquered it? And so they were excited, and they believed that this was going to happen. But they went through the reign of Cyrus and Xerxes and Darius, and maybe even into the reign of Artaxerxes. I don't know. I think they went through 4 kings before they finally established the temple being finished. And then they also started work on building the wall around it. So they established the honor of God. They built a place where he was going to be worshipped, a place where he could come and dwell, a place he would live. And then they built a wall that was going to protect everything that had been done. They worked on building that wall. And Nehemiah was a man who had served in the king's court. He served in Artaxerxes' court, and he was a cupbearer to the king. And he was the political side of things. He was more the practical side of things. Ezra was pretty much a contemporary of his. So the book of Ezra and Nehemiah tend to go hand in hand. Ezra was a contemporary. Ezra's heart was the people of God. He was the prophetic voice. He was the spiritual leader of things. And they were working concurrently. They were working trying to reestablish something for God. And so I just think there are a lot of lessons in here that if we're wanting to build something, and we're wanting to see something built in our communities, we have a lot of things that we can learn by watching what happened before. So if we look to Nehemiah chapter 4, verse 1. They've started work. They've assigned people where they're going to be working and everything. They're working all around at assigned areas, and I'm just kind of taking up the story here. Sanballat, there were several guys here who run into their names who were leaders in the province before Israel came back. They didn't much like the Jews coming back into this land because they had been the boss. They didn't much like them upsetting their culture. So Sanballat was very angry when he learned that we were rebuilding the wall. He flew into a rage and mocked the Jews, saying in front of his friends and the Samaritan army officers, "What does this bunch of poor, feeble Jews think they're doing? Do they think they can build a wall in a day if they offer enough sacrifices? Look at those charred stones they're pulling out of the rubbish and using again." There's the start here. It's not a very promising start, but you just get started building and you got somebody coming and mocking and making fun and deriding you for what you're trying to do, right? And these are real people, and they're probably a bit intimidated because these were the leaders in the area. They've known about being captured and taken over before, so it's not just making fun, but it's a serious, threat to them in a way. But it starts with mockery. It starts with making fun of what they're doing. It starts belittling, what they're doing, belittling what they think they're going to accomplish. To demoralize them in the work that they know they're called to do. They came back and said, "We're supposed to do this. We have been sent here. We're going to reestablish the worship of God. We're going to reestablish His city where He's honored." And then they're being derided, they're being mocked, they're being jeered at openly. Tobiah, the Ammonite, comes along, he joins in the fun. He's standing along beside Sanballat and remarks, "That stone wall would collapse if even a fox walked along the top of us, if it walked along the top of it." You notice that the enemy starts questioning the quality of the stones and the quality of the work. Starts questioning the quality of the stones and the quality of the workmanship. He starts out mocking, starts trying to put that sense of worthlessness in them. "You guys can't do this. You can't do what you're called to do. This is an impossible thing. I mean, look at what you're building with, right? What kind of building are you going to have if you take these stones that have been torn apart off of each other and burned in a fire? You can't use those. We put them in the rubbish heap. They weren't even good for anything. That's what you guys are going to build your city with? That's what you're going to build your walls with? Oh yeah, it's going to be great. You think you're going to keep out invading enemies? Well, a fox is just going to come along, a little tiny fox, run along the top and knock your wall down, That's questioning not just the quality of the stones, but the quality of the work that's put into it, right? As they've come back and they've worked hard to build this. They were terribly torn down. There wasn't anything that looked like a wall. There wasn't anything that looked like it could protect anything. They were starting out in pretty dismal circumstances, and it didn't look like much. This is Nehemiah narrating all this. So it says, "Then I prayed, hear us, O our God, for we're being mocked. May their scoffing fall back on their own heads, and may they themselves become captives in a foreign land. Do not ignore their guilt, do not blot out their sins, for they have provoked you to anger here in the presence of the builders." At last, the wall was completed to half its original height around the entire city, for the people had worked very hard. But when Sanballat and Tobiah and the Arabs, Ammonites, and Ashdodites heard that the work was going ahead and that the gaps in the wall were being repaired, they became furious. They all made plans to come and fight against Jerusalem and to bring about confusion there. But we prayed to our God and guarded the city day and night to protect ourselves. So the enemy first thought, okay, if I just make them feel demoralized enough, they're not going to go ahead with what they're supposed to be doing. They're going to give up on this. And when that didn't work, and the people went ahead and they kept on building, and they started making progress. I mean, I don't know how tall this wall was. Usually they were quite substantial, because this isn't like the wall that your house is built out of. This is a very broad wall, and very tall because it's supposed to protect them from anybody trying to climb over, anybody trying to get in and bring harm to people in their city. So they built it up to half height, and now it's starting to look like, maybe despite the fact that people were making fun of it and said the stuff you're building out of is worthless, and you don't know what you're doing, you're not stonemasons, you're not, masonry workers or anything, this isn't going to work, you're not going to be able to do this. But when they saw progress happening, the enemy didn't give up. The enemy came back harder. The enemy came back on them and said, you know what? We're not going to let this happen. In fact, all of us are going to join together. There's a couple people standing together before, and now they've got entire groups of people, Arabs, Ammonites, and Ashdodites. And they're all coming, and they're angry that something is being built by the people of God. They're angry that people of God are establishing something in the middle of their territory. And so their plan, they were going to come, they were going to attack Jerusalem, and maybe if we attack it hard enough, it's going to create confusion in their ranks. And they're not going to be able to work together to do this, because they have to work together if they're going to build something. They have to be on the same page. They have to be in agreement about what needs to be done and the order it needs to be done. They've got a system worked out. They've been working side by side. Each of them has their section they're responsible for, so nobody can slouch off, because if you do, everybody knows it. Everybody knows you're not doing the work. Everybody knows you're having really long coffee breaks, some tea breaks when you go out there. And because yours isn't built, and everybody else's wall's up here, and yours is still down here. It's like, well, it's probably better stop knocking on work at 2 in the Arvo or something, right? And so it's obvious that they're working together. They've all set their plans, and they've all got their places, and they're working to do something for the good of the entire community. Something for all of them, something for the entire city that they're working to build. And when they're doing this, the enemy thinks, well, we can just bring confusion. Maybe we can get a little fight going between the one next door to them, This family's over here working, and you got this family over here, so maybe we can kind of get them fighting over it. Oh no, my part only goes to here. You have to fill in that next section. Maybe we can get them fighting over it and bickering, and there's going to be confusion in the camp. Maybe they'll stop. Maybe because they're so afraid of us attacking, they'll just give up. We'll just put this all aside, and they'll say, no, we're not going to do anything else. We'll just quit this work. But they had a plan. Instead of just giving up, Nehemiah said, okay, so we prayed. We prayed to God, and then they went to work. As it says, they prayed to God, but then they went to work and guarded the city, and they set guards around, so that night and day there were guards around the city. Because the wall's not big enough to protect them, right? Any threat that was coming from these people was a very viable threat. There's nothing to stop them when the wall's broken down. It's this high, they can climb over it. So they prayed and they asked God, but they also went to work doing whatever they could. And I think so many times you get one side or the other. You got people who are willing to, we got to do this all ourselves, and we got to plan this all out, we got to figure this all out. And then you got the other people who say, well, let's just pray on it. Let's just pray on it. And they're not going to work. Right? It works together. They prayed for protection from God, but then they went ahead and said, okay, well, God gave us 2 hands. God gave us a bunch of men around here. We can all stand up and we can do this. We're not expecting God to do everything while we sit back, and He provides everything for us. So they all jumped in and they said, okay, we're going to do what we can so that we can keep building it. We want this to be a safe place. Then the people of Judah began to complain that the workers were becoming tired. There was so much rubble to be moved out that we could never get it done by ourselves. Meanwhile, our enemies were saying, before they know what's happening, we'll swoop down on them and kill them and end their work. Right? It's a real problem, right? They're tired. They're doing the work of God. They're doing what they're called to do. They're tired. They're tired. They've been putting a lot of effort. There's a lot of rubble. Because there was something big there and it's been demolished. And there's a lot of junk that they have to dig through and get out of the way before they can even start building anything. They're exhausted before they've started. It's a real problem. And the enemy sees that and thinks, what's the best time to get somebody except for when they're tired, right? Okay. I just physically, I don't know what you're like when you're tired, but I'm probably not the best person to be out there working and giving it everything when you're exhausted, right? You're probably not so excited about the plan at this point, and you still feel like you haven't accomplished much. The Jews who lived near the enemy came and told us again and again, they'll come from all directions and attack us. So I placed armed guards behind the lowest parts of the wall in the exposed areas. I stationed the people to stand guard by families armed with swords, spears, and bows. There's some people who are always going to be more vulnerable. Right? There are these ones that are more vulnerable because the wall hasn't been rebuilt back in their area very high. Maybe their family was a smaller group working on it and they couldn't make the progress quite as much. But they're the most vulnerable. They're the ones that were most likely to be harmed if something came there. And, instead of Nehemiah looking and saying, you guys are really pretty insignificant, and saying you'll have to figure it out yourself, he was a leader who gave himself completely to what he was called to do. He gave himself completely to this work, to what he believed God called him to. And so he said, their problem is my problem. Their problem is mine. I can't just turn the other way and say, I've got enough on my plate, leave me alone. I've got enough leading this rebuilding. I've got enough leading this whole area of what's happening around this entire city. So he placed guards there. He placed the guards behind them so that they could keep doing what they were supposed to be doing. And he put these other people as guards behind them. He stationed the people to guard by families. Why do you think he did that? When we have a vested interest in something, aren't we more likely to put everything we have into it? He's put them together with their families and their friends so that when they're working together, they're going to feel a sense of obligation and a sense of responsibility for the people that they're watching. And he puts them all working together. They're watching each other's back. And then he puts these people there. Their sole job is just to guard them while they're doing the work, while they're doing the labor. And they've got swords, they've got spears, they've got bows. These people had to be close enough to them to care to fight alongside them. The work was not going to be completed if they weren't shoulder to shoulder, where they could really watch out for what was happening. If they weren't standing that close to each other in their build, this is a city, right? This is a huge city. Even if you just imagine putting a wall around like this CBD here in Cairns, you're still talking a huge place, right? So they've got people, and they've had to station them, if they've stationed them close enough together, they can be responsible and watch out and see what's happening around them. They're going to be put together with people that they're going to feel responsibility for. They're going to feel a sense that they need to watch out, they need to care, they need to protect. They've got their backs when they're doing their work. They don't have to worry about being attacked when their back is turned and they're bent over and they're fitting stones together. They don't have to worry about being attacked by some enemy out to destroy. Then, as I looked over the situation, I called together the leaders and the people, and I said to them, don't be afraid of the enemy. Remember the Lord, who's great and glorious, and fight for your friends, your family, your homes. He did something that took people's eyes off of the problem, and he put their eyes on Jesus, on the Lord, on their God. He put their eyes back where they needed to belong, and he said, okay, I'm looking, and I'm not denying there's some people out there, and there's an awful lot of them, and they're threatening things, and they got the weapons to back it up. But you know what? We've got a God who's bigger than you. We have a God who's great, and a God who's glorious. Don't be worried about them. Remember God. Remember God. Remember what He's done for us already. Remember He brought us back here so we can start this build. Do you think He's going to let it fall apart? He brought us here to reestablish the temple, to reestablish temple worship, to bring His people back home again, to build a safe city, a safe place where the people of Israel could once again live in their land and dwell in peace and dwell in safety. God brought us back here for this purpose. Oh yeah, I remember He made a king who totally didn't care for us at all. Decreed that we could come back here and tell everybody else to give us money so we could do this, and send gifts and supplies with us so we could do this. Oh yeah, I remember. Certainly that was God. Certainly that was Him. Okay, we're going to look at that. We're not going to look at the enemy. We're not going to look at it. Because then we're going to need courage for a fight. We're all willing to fight for ourselves, but I tell you, it's pretty hard sometimes to find somebody willing to fight for somebody else. For all the good words and all the nice things, even something simple as helping somebody do a repair of their house, and suddenly, where is everybody that was going to be there and have your back, right? I mean, it's not an easy thing, you know what I'm saying? But He gave them courage, because He said, we're doing something together. This isn't about my house, it's not about your house, it's about God's house, it's about what He's building. It's about what He's wanting to do in the earth. It's about reestablishing not just our honor as the people of Israel, but His honor as the God and the Lord of the entire earth. That's what this is about. They knew it wasn't just for them, because people walked past Jerusalem. They saw the broken walls. There's scriptures I don't have to look up, I'm sorry, but they walked past and they said it was a place of jeering and mocking, that people would walk past and say, oh yeah, look at the great city of the Jewish God, sort of thing. You know, scripture talks about it being a haunt for jackals, and, you know, all the wild things took over because it was desolate. And that just honored God, because everybody knew what God was associated with that. Everybody knew it. All the nations who thought their gods were greater walked past and said, see, just proves it. Look, there's nothing left of their temple. Well, guess they don't have a God anymore, and He's not here. There's no place for Him. Look, His people have been carried away into captivity. They've been taken away as slaves. You know, this was about the honor of God. What they were building. They were building something for His honor. When our enemies heard that we knew of their plans and that God had frustrated them, we all returned to our work on the wall. Well, how were the enemy's plans frustrated? That's because the people decided, hey, we're going to look at God, we're not going to look at the circumstances, we're not going to look at the situation. And they made a determination that we've heard what the enemy has planned, we understand, he came here, he tried to mock us, he tried to bring confusion, then he threatened our lives. But you know what? We know your plans. We're not going to give in to them. And it turned them away, and it turned the people back to work, and it turned the enemies back, at least for a season. But from then on, only half my men, only half my men worked, while the other half stood guard with spears, shields, bows, and coats of mail. The officers stationed themselves behind the people of Judah who were building the wall. The common laborers carried on their work with one hand supporting the load and one hand holding a weapon. All the builders had a sword belted to their side. The trumpeters stayed with me to sound the alarm. Then I explained to the nobles and the officials and all the people, the work is very spread out. We are widely separated from each other along the wall. When you hear the blast of the trumpet, rush to whatever it is sounding, to wherever it is sounding, then our God will fight for us. I mean, this picture is an amazing picture of what's happening then, because they're in such danger that they don't dare let their guard down for a moment. They can't. It's too costly. Lives are at stake, and they know it. And if it's not their life, or their family's life, it's their friend's life, it's a relative's life farther down the wall. And so they've worked out a plan. So just saying, well, we can't work, we just got to stand, and we got to cower, and we got to protect ourselves. They said, no, the work's got to go forward at no cost. And so they got half the people standing guard, and they got half the people working, so that they've always got everything covered. They've got everything protected. But even the people who are building are walking around and they got swords strapped to their sides. They're carrying weapons in one hand and they're balancing bricks in the other. They're carrying the mortar in the other hand that's going to hold the bricks together because they can't let down their guard. It's just because they've asked for His protection, and they've got a plan worked out, but they know that they've got to keep working, and they've got to keep fighting. And they can't just put down one or the other to do the opposite thing. They've each got to be giving everything that they have in every moment. I mean, it's going to be exhausting, because he talked earlier that he had people day and night, because they can't take a rest at night. So they're having to work in shifts. They're having to have shifts where people are set aside to do the work. People are set aside to guard. And the people are standing right there. It's the officers are stationing themselves right behind the people. They're guarding them. They don't stand there and say, hey, what do you find out so many times? We're the officers, though, right? They're all out having a smoko, and everybody else is doing the work, right? But they're going to have to, the officers are the ones standing there behind the people, and they're saying, we're not going to let anything happen to you. We're not going to let anything happen to you. We're going to stand here and we're going to protect this. We're going to protect this work. We take this very seriously here. They worked hard. They worked long. They worked early to late. As we go on, we'll talk nice. We worked early, late, from sunrise to sunset. And half the men were always on guard. I also told everyone living outside the walls to move into Jerusalem. That way they and their servants could go on guard duty at night as well as work during the day. This means people gave up their homes. Those people who had established homes and come and reclaimed homes and built homes, however they had worked it, they were living outside of Jerusalem, gave up their houses. They gave up their cushy place that they could live. They gave up going home and putting their feet up every night. They gave it up. because they said, we need you here. The city needs you. The nation needs you. I'm calling you to come. You can stand guard at night, and you can work during the day. Right? Sounds like a great deal, doesn't it? You guys can give up your house, you can give up everything that you have out there, and then you can come to the inconvenience of moving into the city where you probably don't have any sort of proper dwelling to live in, and then you can work day and night along with the rest of us. You know what? But they didn't. They didn't. Because they believed that there was something important that they were building. They believed that it was important to have this place that was protected and safe for the people of God. They believed it was important enough that the honor of God be reestablished in the eyes of all the nations. They believed it was important enough to let it cost them. Not just money, but time, sleep, convenience, everything. And they said, oh, by the way, you can come and you can bring your servants too. So these are people who apparently had money. These are people who were well off. They had servants do their work for them. They weren't the kind of people who were manual laborers, right? They're not the ones that were cut out for that. They were the people in the soft flesh. They're the ones that, as soon as they start working, what happens to their fingers? Their fingers are cracked and bleeding and calloused. You've been there, you know? Because they've never done any hard work, but they did it. They did it. It was a response to a need, and it was a response to something that was bigger than them. And they saw a purpose that was bigger than them, something bigger than them experiencing something in God, and them having something. This was something for their entire nation, and it was worth fighting for. The leaders, the servants, it didn't matter who they worked together. We could get that happening. Wouldn't we be in good shape? We could get the leaders and the people, if you could get the rich people and the poor people, if we could get the people from the wrong side of the tracks and the right side of the tracks, and we got us all working together, wouldn't it be something? And he did it. This was the kind of man Nehemiah was. He had gone from the king's service and come here and laid down his life to do this. His life in the king's service was pretty easy, probably. You know, I believe he was the cupbearer for the king. I mean, okay, his life was at risk because he'd have to taste the drink and stuff and make sure things were fine so that it wasn't poison. So if anybody died, it was Nehemiah. But physically, it probably wasn't an extremely difficult job. He probably did a lot of bossing people around, telling them what to do. But he wasn't the laborer, and then he came and he's doing the work with them. He's not just telling them. If we listen to the rest of this last bit, during this time, none of us, not I, nor my relatives, nor my servants, nor the guards who were with me, ever took off our clothes. We carried our weapons with it at all times, even when we went for water. They were so committed to this that they didn't even allow themselves to get comfortable at night, take off their clothes, and crawl in bed to sleep. They didn't allow it. They didn't allow themselves. Nobody else told them that. He was in charge. He was the one that came stirring this up and trying to build this. And he had authority from the king to be able to do this. And he could have sat back and just watched and been the supervisor. But he wasn't. They were so ready and so prepared that they had to have their clothes on all the time. They had to be ready. No matter what happened, that they could grab that sword and they were ready to go. No matter what the need was, they were there and they were ready to fight off whatever came at them. They were ready to run to the aid of their neighbor. You know, we talked about having the trumpeters up on the top, the men that would blow the shofar, right? To call people in when something happened and something went wrong. If somebody dared attack on one side, they had that signal. Everybody would drop what they were doing and they'd send people over. They quit their building so that they could run to rescue the next one. They were always in a state of readiness. Do you know that is exhausting, being in a continual state of readiness? I mean, it is. It is just like, even when you sleep, you're in that state of readiness. Now, we have a son who spent time in Iraq. And even when you're in the compound, You have to be in a perpetual state of readiness. You've probably heard on the news, we've had incidents where somebody that was supposedly a trusted person grabs a gun and starts shooting people in a camp in Afghanistan or Iraq or wherever the place may be. So he had to be in a constant state of readiness. He had to be on the alert, on the edge. It's that kind of sleep that you don't really sleep because you're not sure what might happen, and you want to be ready if it does. You don't want to miss. You don't want to be caught unaware. You don't want to be left there at the mercy of some ruthless enemy because you weren't prepared. And so when he came back from Iraq and he lived with us for a while, he would have nightmares and things because you're always in that perpetual state of just alertness. And one time, I remember going in, because I heard a commotion, it was like in the middle of the night, and he's there and he's got this great big old long knife. I mean, like a crocodile cut, deep knife, a big knife, not a little parrot knife from your drawer. He's got this big knife pulled, and he's looking out the window, because he immediately, as soon as he heard the sound outside the window was up, and he had his weapon ready. I'm like, I'm glad it wasn't me, but you know what it was? It was our horse. The horse had gotten out of the fence. He broke through the fence and was wandering just right up by the house, and he would never be that close. But he was that aware that at the sound of the horse walking outside his window, he jumped and was immediately in defense mode and ready to attack, basically, whatever it was. And that's where these people had to be. That's where they had to be. But I'm skipping parts of it, but their efforts paid off because they finished it. They finished this. If we look in chapter 6, verse 15, he said, "So on October 2nd, the wall was finally finished. Just 52 days after we had begun." I cannot even imagine. This is like one of the World Revival Church building the building in Kansas City stories. I mean, how fast that building went up it was not possible. It wasn't humanly possible for things to go up as fast as they did. The city told them it would be 2 years before you'd have occupancy, and how many months was it? Do you know exactly?
We poured the slab on October 30th. We had our first service in January.
So, in Kansas City, they poured the slab October 30th and had their first service in part of the building January 5th.
2 months.
So, 2 months basically. About the same amount of time it took them to build this. I mean, it was amazing. But it was because people like my crazy husband were there on the rooftop of this very, very tall building, with ice on the roof, putting metal sheeting up and screwing it down. I didn't know this till afterwards, some of the stories. Probably a good thing, or I would have also been awake all night because I wouldn't be able to sleep because I was worried about it. But it was because people banded together. And they said, "We believe in this. This is important. I'm here when I sleep." Tend to work till 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, and be up at 6 and go to work and work his full-time job. Hard physical job, laying carpet. And then he'd go come grab a bite to eat and go to the church and work all evening and go into the night again. And lots of people did that. And that's how they were able to do it. And that's what happened here. 52 days after they started, they had built the wall that everybody said was impossible. They built this wall around the city to protect the presence of God, to protect the place that His presence was going to dwell. They built the place for Him, they built the temple, and then they built the wall to protect it. And it only took them 52 days, but they worked so hard. They had stories to tell, I'm sure. I'm sure the kids ran a bit wild for 52 days. Because moms out there too, it's not just the men, they're all out for work. And I can tell you at WRC when they were building the building, the men may have been doing the hard stuff, but you'd have the ladies in there painting, you'd have them sweeping floors. I took meals a couple times, like big, huge pots of soup and things like that, and you'd make and take food, and you had no idea, dozens of men sometimes, and people had food there all the time, because the women were providing for it, you know. It wasn't just a few people who did this, everybody did this, and that's what happened here. In 52 days, they'd done the impossible. They'd done what everybody said couldn't be done. They said the wall's going to fall down, and a box walks on it. Oh yeah, look at them, look at this all charred stones they're using. They're just trash in the building that. They're not going to be able to build it, but they did. They did, they built it. When our enemies in the surrounding nations heard about it, they were frightened and humiliated. Why do you think they were frightened? Why do you think they were frightened? They thought, if these people can do the impossible, if they can do this in 52 days, if these people who've been nothing but slaves can do this, with using materials that we threw away, if they can do this, what can they do to us? What can they do? There's nothing that's going to stop them. The God that they have behind them. There's nothing that's going to stop them when they set their minds to something. When they decide they're going to do something, there's nothing that's going to stop them. And they're afraid. They were afraid. And they were humiliated. Because all those things that they had made fun of, and all those things that they had said bad about them, all those times they criticized them, all the times they mocked them, all the times they said they were crazy, well, look who's humiliated now. Look who's humiliated. The mockers aren't saying anything anymore, because God's done something huge with them. They realized that this work had been done with the help of our God. That's why they were afraid. They knew He wasn't their God. And they knew this guy was really powerful if these people could do this, with what He'd done. And I think that there's some important things, and you probably picked up on a lot of them. I'm hoping you did. But, you know, we're not always quick on the uptake sometimes. We don't always pick up on the things that, and apply them to our lives, because I don't want this to be a story. I don't want it to be a story for you. If you walked away and said, oh, she told us a great story about Nehemiah rebuilding walls, I'm going to be really not happy. Because this isn't about Nehemiah. This isn't about Israel back then. This is about you, here, now. It's about Cairns. It's about Heathcote, Victoria. It's about Cooktown. It's about Cooktown. Right? This isn't about something that happened a long time ago. This is about the God that did this for them and what He can do with us. Do you know, I think most of us have been through the fire. We've been through the fire. I know some of your stories. Some of them I don't. We've been through the fire. Do you know that we're like those charred stones that have been thrown out in the rubbish heap? Ever feel like that? Charred stones are still usable. Fire may leave its mark, but it doesn't make us useless, and it doesn't make us weak. I want you to get that. You may be marked. You may be marked. But it doesn't make you useless to the kingdom of God. And it doesn't make you too weak that you can't do anything. Once you grab that. Because that's what the enemy does. He's going to question you. He's going to question the quality of the stones. Us. Right? We're supposed to be the stones. Living stones joined together to become the temple of the living God, are we not? And the enemy's going to question the quality of the stones. He's going to question. You're going to have it in your head. But I've just been through so much, and I've just had so much happen to me, and my heart's been broken. I don't think I'm usable, but you know what? It's the enemy. There's nothing stopped these stones from being built into something amazing. And he's going to question the quality of the work that you do. He's going to question whether what you're doing is worth anything. He's going to put it there. First of all, he's going to question that you're worth anything, and then he's going to question that you're able to do anything. That's the plan of the enemy. And if that doesn't work, he's going to send confusion, and he's going to try to create division, and he's going to try to make y'all confused about who you're supposed to be and what you're supposed to do, and whether this is right or that is wrong, and he's just going to bring so much, and you're also confused. You can't do anything. So what the enemy wants to do, he wants to bring confusion. But you know what? We decided, we pray for God's help, but we're going to go to work too. And we want a place where God's presence can dwell. We are that temple. We're being fitted into and built into a temple that carries the presence of God. But you know what? It's our job to build that wall around it that's going to protect what is happening. It's going to protect what God is doing. When enemies come in and they start trying to tear things apart, and they start trying to break things apart, they're threatening to attack you, they're threatening to destroy you. You know what? We've prayed for protection, and we're going to keep right on working. We're going to keep right on doing what we need to do, because this community, our communities, need to see God living and dwelling and moving and doing things that leave people speechless. That leave them standing there with nothing to say. Those people who made fun of you now become those who want to join you and be part of what you're doing. They need to see something to be like that. And I find one of the biggest hindrances to that is we're not willing to let God build us into a temple. We're not willing to let us and put us together with other people. We all are pretty good at wanting the presence of God for ourselves. But I find the church as a whole is really sad, because we all want to be a bunch of little temple-ettes. We don't want to be one temple, you know? Oh, we can't associate with them. They're not like us. Well, is that what we're supposed to be? Is that who we're supposed to be? You know, we don't know what it is to be fitted and joined together with anybody. You know, that fear of commitment. You know, we talked earlier about people not getting married, right? They just live together. You know, it's like that in the body of Christ. People aren't going to get married to anybody else in the spirit. They're just going to live together, and then when it's convenient, they just move on. How about we just throw a few rocks on top of each other, a few stones, and we don't put any mortar to hold them together, and we expect the wall's going to hold together? It doesn't work like that. It is so dishonoring to God that He's looking for a place to be able to come, and He's looking to be able to pour out His Spirit, and He's looking to be able to pour out His life, and we're letting petty things tear us apart and keep us separated from each other. You know, it's kind of like, I think when we look at different churches and different bodies, and we start looking at things, and you're separated out, right? You each got your own area that you're building. You've got your own section of the wall, right? This Cannes Market Grace Church has its own thing that God has called them to do and be here. But that doesn't mean that they can't be with anybody else. It doesn't mean they can't love the people in the church down the street. It doesn't mean that they can't help them if they need help. If their building gets damaged in a cyclone, I sure expect that Peter and Melissa are going to be the people who are willing to say, I don't care that we sing different than you. I don't care that we're not part of your denomination, but we're going to be there. Because when that whistle, when that shofar sounds, we're still close enough to hear each other. And when somebody's in need, we sure better be there. You know, your churches, your pastors need to know you are locked in there enough that there's mortar holding you in there. And somebody have to really work hard to pry you out of there. They need to know. These people, what would have happened if someone decided to stay home and not come, and they decided not to, oh, well, you know, I don't feel like working pretty tired. You know, I was up late last night gardening, and so I don't think I should have to work today. It's garden yesterday, and, you know, what would happen? They would have never built the wall. We're wanting to protect this work of God. We're wanting to protect what God's doing in the earth. We want to protect what He's doing in Australia. We don't have time. We don't have time to take it easy and not be linked to each other. We have to risk being close enough to somebody that you're sleeping and they're close enough you can hear them snoring when they fall off to sleep, right? When somebody gets to use the toilet, everybody else hears them, right? And we have to be like that. What kind of building do you have if it's just a bunch of separated stones and they're not joined together and they're not put together? What's God going to build? We can cry for His presence all the time, but if we don't build something for Him to fill, we're not going to have it in that measure. Yeah, we each carry the Spirit around with us. Thankfully. Thank God He gave His Spirit. But you know, this community needs more than that. Our cities need more than that. They need more than that. They need a place that has been built where the work of God is more important than anything else. Preparing a place where His presence and people demands relentless warfare and work. It demands that we be relentless. We can't afford to sleep. Take our leisure. We can't afford to lay back and rest. We can't afford to supervise everybody else with the work. We can't afford to take time off. I'm not saying we can't go on holiday. Don't put that in our mouth. But we can't afford in the Spirit to let down. We can't afford to take it easy. We got to be ready. We got to have that sword in one hand. We got to have our tools in the other. Whatever your tools are, whatever your section is you're building, you got to be there to build it, and you got to be ready all the time. That's what's going to make a place where God can move and do great things. That's what's going to make the mockers and the jeers shut up. It's what's going to make them hang their heads in humiliation. It's what's going to make them tremble and fear, because what on earth is happening in that place? What on earth? Not this building, you understand that, but the place that we build as the body of Christ, the larger body of Christ in Cairns. It's going to take more, because if we each do our own little thing and we aren't listening for the sound and we're not working together, nothing's going to happen. I mean, we'll get a measure, because God responds to our movement towards it. But it grieves me. So it's got to grieve the Father. It's got to grieve Him. That anything can matter more than His presence. It requires giving up our lives for the benefit of the whole. No time to put down your guard and no time to sit around in your jammies. We don't get that a cold winter day and you put on your jammies and you sit at home. We don't get a season where we get off in the Spirit. We don't get it. Time is urgent. Everybody wants to talk about the end of time, whatever your view is on that. If we want to see God move, we've got to take it seriously. We've got to take it seriously. In 1 Corinthians 3, verse 16 and 17, Paul says, "Don't you realize that all of you together are the temple of God, and the Spirit of God lives in you? God will bring ruin upon anyone who ruins this temple. For God's temple is holy, and you Christians are that temple." Don't you understand? He's going, don't you get it? Don't you get it? You, the whole body, are stones. Each one of you being built into a temple. We don't get to walk around and be our own little temple. He's building one temple, one body, and we're each part of it. the temple that the Spirit will fill. When we cry out and we say, God, send revival. God, send your Spirit. God, come move. God, send an outpouring. Pour out your life. Pour out your life here in Kansas. When we pray that, when we ask that, we're saying fill the temple. But if the temple's got all these cracks in it and all these places because nobody's together, we're missing it. He says, God's going to bring ruin on anybody who tries to tear that apart. Anybody who tries. That means anytime we get in the way of what God's wanting to do because we're selfish, because we're lazy, because we don't quite see eye to eye on somebody, because we're just not that committed, or we have commitment issues. If we do that, God says he'll cause ruin on people who don't take this seriously enough. But he'll fill it if we do. He'll fill it if we do. God's temple is holy. It's holy. Set apart. That's what that means, right? His temple was holy. It wasn't for any other purpose. It wasn't for any other use. That's why when conquering armies would go in and they'd slaughter a pig on the altar, because they knew this was supposed to be holy to God, and that was the most insulting thing they could think of to do. It was supposed to be set apart. Nothing else was supposed to happen but things that honored God there. Nothing else. And as his collective temple, we're supposed to be holy. There's supposed to be nothing else that's controlling, nothing else that's taking its way. And we don't want anything to defile this altar. We don't want anything to defile the temple, because it's holy, and it's precious to God, and we are that temple. His people are precious to him. I don't care what church they go to. It's about those people who are really part of him. People can be part of a church and not be part of his temple. People can be on the board in a church and not be part of his temple. I'm talking about those that are being fitted and joined together. Our hearts should go out and connect with those who are like-minded. Those who love Jesus, who want to see him honored. We're trying to do the right thing. If they have a different name or a different label, it shouldn't really matter to us. We should be above that. And we should care so much about this that we're going to protect it. And we can't let our pettiness get in the way of things, because this is a precious thing. This is a precious thing. We want to see God move. The scripture gives me hope. I hope it gives you hope that God can take a few charred stones and some people who aren't probably very good laborers, and he can build something amazing. He can build something amazing. We're a little handful here, all maybe a bit dented and a bit smoke covered, but he can build something. He can build something here in Kansas. He can build something out of every person who's loving him with their lives and build it into something amazing. And all the things that the enemy has taken, every time that there's bickering in the church, every time that church is split and one goes off here and another goes there, and the enemy laughs and he taunts and says, see, as soon as you start getting part of the wall built, it falls back down. It doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be that way. We set aside those things that would bring division. We stop being resistant to being plugged into each other, connected to each other so tightly. No, it's uncomfortable. You know that to get those bricks that tight to where they're not having rain coming through, it's probably not very comfortable. And they slap some mortar between them and really hold it together. It's not always comfortable. But God can do amazing things. He gets people who are willing to go to work, who are willing to be vigilant, who are willing when they see something start to crop up, who are willing to fight it, who are willing to be awakened in the middle of the night. For spiritual warfare, some of you may be pretty good at that, but what about if it's practical? And somebody says, my roof's leaking, I need some help, and you gotta help me. How good are we at that? We tend to be good at one or the other, not both usually. But we need that heart, that passion, that determination that we're going to see something built here. And no matter what the enemy has said, no matter what's happened to us in our past, we want to be the people who are joined together, that the presence of God can fill, and that people are going to stand amazed. People are going to be humiliated who made fun at Cairns Marketplace Church. People who made fun of World Revival Church of Victoria, whatever the name of the church is. Those people who made fun of you, you know who they are. You know who they are. And they're going to stand humiliated when God does something miraculous. And they're going to be left with nothing to say. And they're going to be thinking, I've got some things to answer to God, because I made fun of who He is and who He was using. So, I think we may not look like much today, but I think we're the first few stones we got for something here. I want you to be encouraged that, nothing's new under the sun. And the enemy comes and he starts questioning who you are. He starts questioning whether you're able to do something or not. When he starts trying to bring confusion in your heart, I want you to be able to stop him in his tracks and say, nope, I know how this works. Not going to happen. We're building a wall. We're building a wall. I want to see those of you who've never seen yourselves as fighters become fighters. Because we can tell that's just not my personality. We can't say, well, that's not my calling. That's not my gift. I'm sorry, my gift is supervision. My gift is offering suggestions. No, we can't use those for excuses. We can't use them. Because we all have to be warriors. We all have to be fighters. And that's the reality of where we are. I'm reminded all the time when I see things in this nation to realize where we are. We're at war. But we're trying to build something. So we're going to do both. We're going to work with one hand. We're going to hold a weapon of choice in the other. And we're going to be warriors. And we're going to be fighters. And everything else that would bring unholiness into the kingdom of God, everything that would stop us from being fitted together to make that temple, everything that would make it so that there wasn't a place for him to settle, just needs to go today. Just needs to go today. I'm not even going to say what it is. I know we've all got those things, though. So today, I just want everybody to stand up. Jesus, help us, help your people, God. We want to see great things happen. We have such big dreams. They seem too big for the few stones we have. They seem too big for the rubble that's all around. They seem too big for our qualifications. They seem too big for what we're able to do, what we think we can do ourselves. God, they seem too big, but we set our eyes on you. We make the decision. We're setting our eyes on you. We're looking at the God who is great, the God who is glorious,
The God who can build a wall around a city in 52 days. We're looking to you, God. We're looking to you with expectation to move and to do great things in this area. We're looking for you to begin to build this place. Build the temple, God. Build your temple in this place. Right now, God, we want you to come fill this. And we're going to do whatever we can to make us a place that you can fill, that your Spirit can fill, God. God, we want to stop the mouths of our enemies. We want to stop the voice of the mockers. We want to stop those who have laughed at the crazy charismatics, Pentecostals, whatever you want to call them. God, we want to stop it. We want to stop them now. We want the fear of the Lord to come on people. We want such miraculous things to take place that people see and recognize that, God. We ask, God, that you would just look here and you would take us. We may not be much, God. We're trying our best to say, we want you. We want you to be Lord. We want you to be King. We believe you died for us. And you rose again, and you live forever, seated in heaven at the right hand of God the Father, interceding on our behalf. We believe that you died for every person out there. We want to start living like people who believe it. We want to start living like people who don't care about ourselves, but care about the good of what you want to do in the earth, God. God, come move among us, God. Come, God. Narrow our vision down, God, that it's focused on you. It's focused on what you want to accomplish. It's focused on how you want to do it, God. And everything that's us just gets out of the way, God. We choose to set ourselves out of the way for something that you're wanting to do, God. We're tired of the things being held back because we haven't given ourselves over, God. I ask that you start building today, God. Start fitting us together. Start fitting us together, God. Oh yeah, Melissa, just turn on some music. I really want you to do business with God, because I don't want to get you excited about something that can't happen with where we are. I want us to respond, all of us, to God and say, God, what needs to go? I want every fear of commitment. I want every fear of being tied down, or every insecurity of being wrong, maybe, or not doing the right thing. I want it gone. I want it gone from us. We can't afford it. We can't afford it. And I don't want us to just have personal experiences, but I want us to be found together today. To this be the start of being willing to let us rub so close to each other that it feels a bit uncomfortable. That it's scary to say, I'll be there for you. But I want that shaping of our character, that we can be like that and we can be counted on. I want to be that person. I want to be that person that Peter and Melissa need us. We're going to do whatever we can to get up here. I don't care if it's or real flooded and we really need some carpet, and Tim goes, I don't want to do carpet. I want to be that person. We don't want to be the leaders. I speak for Peter and Melissa. We don't want to be the leaders who sit back in the back room while everybody else does the work. But we don't want to do the work ourselves either. We want to fall side by side doing the same thing. I want you to know that if anybody's going to take an arrow or a knife or a sword to the back, it's going to be Peter and Melissa, because they're standing there watching while you guys are doing the work. While they've equipped you, they put you out there to do something, they're going to stand there, they're going to do whatever they can to protect you. And I expect it to run both ways. I expect you guys to do that for your pastors. I expect you to do that for each other. And it's a totally ridiculous expectation without the Spirit of God doing something deep in all of us. Because it's not going to happen. So I want you to feel free, however it takes for you. I'm not going to pray for people, I don't think, because I want you to do business with God. Whether it's being reminded again of who He is, being reminded of what He can do, being reminded that He's great and that He's glorious, being reminded of that, whether it's having fear, commitment and making a promise you can't fulfill. I want that ripped off your life. I want the rough edges on us to keep somebody else from getting close, to be knocked off. I don't know what it is for you. But I know that God wants to build a temple. He wants to fill it. He wants it to be the place that people can go for healing. He wants it to be the place people can go for life. He wants it to be the place that people out there look and they don't just see they see the glory of God. They see something amazing. They see something wonderful. And the things that they meant to say just stick in the back of their mouth because they can't even say it. Because they see what God is doing. And whatever the cost, if it's laziness that needs to go, if it's us just being lazy, if it's us being unaware of what's happening, if it's missing what the Spirit is saying, whatever needs to happen, whatever needs to change, but we need to get a mindset. If we're too placid, if we're too laid back, if we're too taking it easy, then it needs to go. We need a warrior spirit. You know what it is. God knows what it is. Let Him speak to you. Let Him speak to you. And dig this out with Him. And then start making our connections with each other. Start asking God, what am I supposed to do so that I'm fitted in? What am I supposed to do that my pastors can count on me no matter what? Who am I supposed to become that they don't have to worry if there's going to be a big section of the wall that's not defended and somebody's kid's going to die because we weren't there? Because the wall wasn't rebuilt and somebody's family's going to suffer. Somebody's home gets burned in the spirit because we weren't there and the wall wasn't protected because we decided we had better things to do. Whatever it is, start working it through with God. I'm not laying everything on you. Let God lay on you what it is that needs to happen because He's wanting to build something and He's wanting it to be amazing.